Across the western desert of Egypt, where the wind drifts over an ocean of gold and the sky bends into an unbroken horizon, the Great Pyramids rise like eternal sentinels, their angular silhouettes glowing against the heat-hazed dawn. For more than 45 centuries, their stones have held the weight of human awe. They are mountains carved by human hands, vast and still, bearing the memory of a civilization whose voice echoes across time. Khufu's pyramid once soared to 146 meters, the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 4 millennia, built from more than 2 million limestone blocks, each quarried, shaped, moved, and set with deliberate purpose. Beside it, Khufu's pyramid stands, only slightly smaller, its casing stones still clinging to the apex, shining like ancient stars that refuse to fade. These monuments provoke a question that has traveled through centuries. How were they built? For as long as humanity has stood beneath their broad shadows, people have imagined impossible answers: slave armies, lost technologies, forgotten civilizations. Yet the true story is preserved not in fantastical myths, but in the dust of forgotten harbors, buried villages, and the quiet diaries of men long gone. To uncover that story, the journey leads not only to the Giza Plateau, but far beyond it, deep into the Red Sea Desert where ruins sleep beneath cliffs and forgotten wines. But before those clues were found, Egypt's most important discoveries rested for centuries beneath the sands of the pyramids themselves. For most of history, the Giza Plateau was a barren, wind-swept expanse. After the Old Kingdom collapsed, the workers' village and administrative quarter were swallowed by time. When Napoleon arrived in Egypt in 1798, his scholars sketched the pyramids rising from deserted plains, unaware that beneath their very feet lay the homes and graves of the people who built them. It was not until the late 20th century, when archaeologists Zahi Hawass and Mark Leonard began excavating the plateau's eastern edge, that the long-buried story of the builders began to emerge. What they uncovered transformed everything. Beneath layers of sand, they found a vast, planned village: streets, bakeries, breweries, administrative buildings, barracks, and a cemetery. The people who built the pyramids were not slaves. They were skilled laborers, stone cutters, boatmen, carpenters, and administrators, organized into teams of 40, rotating seasonally with pride. Their bones bore the marks of physical labor, but also of good nutrition. Their graves were well built and placed near their king, an honor not afforded to slaves. Many skeletons showed signs of healed injuries, evidence of medical care. They lived, worked, and died as respected members of a monumental national project. Yet despite all the dedication, one problem remained. Very few written records survived at Giza. The desert winds, looters, and time had erased almost everything. No papyri from Khufu's reign were found on the pyramid plateau. Only one tiny statue of Khufu survives, a small ivory figurine barely 10 centimeters tall. For the greatest builder of the ancient world, it seemed history had left only whispers. Then, 200 kilometers from Giza, on a desolate stretch of the Red Sea coastline, a discovery emerged that would change our understanding forever. A team led by the French Egyptologist Pierre Talat uncovered a vast ancient harbor, Wadi al-Jarf, the oldest port in Egyptian history. At first glance, the sight seemed bewildering: long rows of massive stone galleries carved into the mountainside, sealed with huge limestone blocks. These chambers once stored dismantled boats, secured safely between expeditions. And carved on the stones, everywhere, was the name of Khufu. For the first time, evidence directly linked this distant desert port to the era of the Great Pyramid. But the most extraordinary moment came in 2013, when Talat's team opened one of the sealed chambers and found bundles of delicate, ancient papyri, the oldest ever discovered in Egypt. They were administrative documents, written in hieratic, astonishingly detailed and perfectly preserved. Among them was the daily diary of a foreman named Mir. He supervised a team of about 40 elite boatmen. In his logbooks, he recorded every task, every delivery, every transport, something like the ancient world's Excel spreadsheets. Mir wrote of delivering limestone blocks from the quarries of Tura on the east bank of the Nile to the construction site at Giza. The entries describe boats sailing across the Nile, navigating canals, and unloading stone at a massive harbor at the foot of the pyramid. Suddenly, the silence of Khufu's reign was broken. The papyri revealed that Khufu ruled for at least 27 years longer than previously thought, providing enough time for such a colossal project. They revealed that the smooth outer casing of the Great Pyramid, made from brilliant Tura limestone, was transported in 2 to 3 days by boat. They revealed a royal palace called Ojo Khufu, long live Khufu, likely located beneath modern Cairo. And they mentioned the presence of royal archives somewhere near the palace, potentially one of Egypt's most extraordinary undiscovered areas. The connection between Wadi al-Jarf and Giza deepened. When Mark Lenner compared the names of boat crews recorded in the papyri with inscriptions found on tools and structures at Giza, he realized they matched. The same teams working on the Red Sea expeditions were also delivering stone to the pyramid site. The two deserts, once thought to be unrelated landscapes, were linked through labor, logistics, and administration. It was a revelation. The pyramid builders were not isolated workers at Giza. They were part of a nationwide network stretching from Sinai to Cairo, from the Nile Valley to the Red Sea coast. Everything timber, copper, food, stone flowed through this machine of organization. But why did the Egyptians rely on the Red Sea? The answer lay in the Sinai Peninsula, one of the richest sources of copper in the ancient world. Copper tools were essential for quarrying limestone, cutting blocks, carving channels, and shaping stone. Sinai's mines were active in Khufu's era, and Wadi al-Jarf served as the primary launching point for expeditions to extract copper. Archaeologists discovered fortresses, defensive walls, and storage chambers along these routes, evidence of a highly organized system protecting and supplying mining missions. Between voyages, ships were dismantled, carried ashore, and stored in the massive stone galleries carved into the mountainside, sealed away until the next expedition. Yet knowing where tools came from was only part of the mystery. The next challenge was understanding how the Egyptians used those tools to extract and shape the huge stone blocks. In the same region where Muir once worked, modern stonemason Frank Bourgas undertook a remarkable experiment. Using only copper chisels, wooden mallets, and ancient-style methods, he attempted to cut limestone from the quarry face. At first, the process seemed impossibly slow. Copper dents quickly, and limestone is unforgiving. But then Bourgas discovered something ancient workers may have known intuitively: water changes everything. When limestone is wetted, its outer layer softens, becoming significantly easier to cut. Using repeated wetting and chiseling, he could carve trenches 5 times faster than before. With a team working constantly, they successfully extracted a block of about 1.5 cubic meters in just 8 days. The fragments and chips produced during cutting were then used to build ramps, platforms, and paving around the quarry sites, turning waste into infrastructure. This experiment revealed that with water, tools, and teamwork, the Egyptians did not need lost technologies or mysterious methods. They needed skill, persistence, and organization. Yet even with stone cut and transported, a daunting question remained: how were millions of blocks lifted to the staggering height of 146 meters? For centuries, theories swirled. Perhaps a single straight ramp stretched toward the sky, but such a structure would have been longer than the pyramid itself, requiring material volumes too vast to be practical. Others imagined spiraling ramps wrapping around the outer walls, yet no clear physical evidence has ever been found. A more recent idea suggests internal ramps hidden inside the structure, but this remains unproven. The answer began to take shape far from Giza, in a remote quarry at Hatnub, more than 300 kilometers to the south. Here, archaeologists studying one of Egypt's oldest alabaster quarries found something extraordinary: an ancient ramp carved directly into the bedrock. Unlike simple inclines, this ramp had staircases running along both sides and a series of deep post holes arranged symmetrically. These holes once held wooden poles around which ropes were wrapped. Excavators realized that workers above could pull the ropes upward while teams below stabilized the load, allowing heavy blocks to be hauled up extremely steep angles. Tool marks in the quarry matched those used during Khufu's reign, and most significantly, Khufu's own cartouche was found at the site, confirming that this system was in use during the very era of the Great Pyramid. It was no longer speculation. The Egyptians had built sophisticated, pulley-assisted ramps that used human power, wooden poles, and rope systems to move enormous stones up gradients previously thought impossible. When all these discoveries are placed together, the picture becomes clearer than ever before. The pyramid builders were part of one of the greatest logistical engines in human history. Workers cut limestone using water-softened quarrying techniques. Copper tools forged from Sinai mines shaped the stones. Teams of 40 organized along strict lines of administration hauled blocks along specially prepared paths. Boats carried Tura limestone along canals to a bustling port at Giza, and steep ramps like the one at Hatnub may have allowed builders to raise heavy stones efficiently toward the sky, layer after layer, year after year. The Great Pyramid was not a miracle. It was a triumph of planning, engineering, and human collaboration. And so the myths fall away. The pyramids were not built by slaves. They were not the work of forgotten super-civilizations, lost technologies, or visitors from distant stars. They were built by the ancient Egyptians themselves, farmers who became laborers during the flood season, craftsmen who worked with pride, administrators who recorded every detail, sailors who navigated long coastlines, miners who carved through Sinai's copper-bearing mountains, stonemasons who understood the nature of rock and water. They built with intelligence, with organization, with devotion to their king and their gods. The answers to the Great Pyramid's mysteries did not come from Giza alone. They emerged from desert harbors, remote mines, buried ramps, and weathered papyri found far from the shadow of the colossal monument. Together, these discoveries reveal a civilization that understood logistics on a continental scale, administration with remarkable precision, and engineering that transcended anything seen in the ancient world. The stones of Khufu's pyramids still rise against the desert sky, unchanging yet ever revealing. And now, with every new discovery from the far edges of Egypt, we come closer to hearing the true voices of the men who built them: the boat crews, the quarry workers, the scribes, the engineers, all united in a project that reshaped the horizon and carved their legacy in stone. The Great Pyramid stands not as a riddle left behind by a forgotten world, but as a monument to human ingenuity, organization, and endurance. It is the legacy of a civilization that, across deserts and seas, lifted mountains toward the heavens one block, one rope, one breath at a time.